Hello, I'm Marcel and be welcome to my channel. Today we will learn about how to automate SAP with Power Automate Desktop. So just before getting started, let's take a brief look about what we'll automate on SAP with Power Automate Desktop. So we'll create an automation that will create purchase orders on SAP. So it will open SAP and do the login. Then it will execute the transaction code ME21N. So we navigate to the page from where we can create purchase orders. And then when we are here on the create purchase order page, the bot will read data from an Excel file which is needed to create the purchase order. So we'll fill the vendor on the field vendor. And then on this case, we should have here on the SAP table 2 lines with the data that we can see here on material, PO quantity and net price. And after that, create the purchase order by clicking here on this button and then close SAP. And that's basically it. So let's get started on learning about SAP automation with Power Automate Desktop. First things first, in order to be able to automate SAP, we need to enable SAP scripting. To enable it, here on the SAP login window, we can see here on the top this button. So let's click on it and then click on options. And then here, let's open accessibility is scripting and click on scripting. And let's check here the checkbox for enable scripting. And also make sure these 2 checkboxes are disabled so we don't get notified when the script is running on SAP. So now let's click on apply and press OK. And now that we have SAP available to be automated, let's create a new flow on Power Automate Desktop. So let's click here on new flow and let's define the flow name SAP Purchase Order Creation. And let's click on create. So here we have the flow created. So which is the first action that our bot should do to automate SAP? So the first action will be to open and log in on SAP. And for that, we have a specific action on Power Automate Desktop. So if we search here on actions for SAP, we can see actions that are specifically done to automate SAP. And we'll use the launch SAP one to open and log in on SAP. So let's drag the launch SAP action into our flow. Now we have to provide some details to this action that are specifically about login into SAP. So connection mode will use server description and login mode will use manual login. We have also the SSO option, which doesn't require to provide a password. Then we have to provide the server description and we can find it on SAP logon. So when we start SAP, we can see on the right side the added connections and here we can see the name of these connections. And so it's the name that we have to provide here on server description. So in my case, it's SAP. Then the client. So here we have to provide the client that we use when we log in into SAP system. So in my case, it's 800. Then the username that we use to log in. Then the password. And then the language that we use to log in into SAP. And that's basically it. So now let's save and let's see how it's running. So it should start SAP and log in. So I just closed SAP. So now I'll run the flow. So here we can see that SAP was opened. So now should be done the login on SAP. And here we can see that it worked. So our bot, our flow, opened SAP and did a login into the SAP system. So after opening and logging into SAP, our flow should execute the ME21 transaction code. So we navigate to the create purchase order page. So how we can do that on Power Automate Desktop? Fortunately, we have a specifically designed action to execute transactions, which is the action start SAP transaction. So let's drag it to our flow. And so we just have to provide the transaction code, which is ME21N. So let's save and let's run. So I'll just close again SAP and run the flow again. So SAP is starting. Now will be done the login. And here we can see that was executed the transaction, and now here we are on the create purchase order page. So now that the bot navigates to the create purchase order page, it should read the Excel file which has the data needed to create the purchase order. So to read the Excel file, first we need to use the launch Excel action and indicate to the action the Excel file to use. So let's indicate it and let's press save. And then let's indicate the action to perform on this Excel file. So we want to read the data from the file. So we'll use the read from Excel worksheet action. And so here on retrieve, let's just select all available values from worksheet. So we read the whole worksheet data. And now let's click on advanced and indicate that the first line of range contains column names, which is true. So we can see the first lines, it's the column headers. So let's mark this option as true and let's click on save. And then after reading the Excel file, we can close it by using the close Excel action. So let's click on save. And so after having the data from the Excel file, which will be on the Excel data variable, we need to create a loop for each row of our Excel file. So then we insert the vendor, and also for each row, we insert the material, PO quantity, and net price on the SAP table. So we'll use the for each loop to create a loop for each row of the Excel data variable. So now that we have a loop for each row of the Excel file, first we need to fill the vendor field on SAP. So we can see that we have the vendor on one of the rows only. So on Power Automate Desktop, we'll have the condition that if the vendor from the current row on the loop is not empty, we will fill the vendor field, else we will do nothing to the field. So here, let's add a if action inside of the for each loop. And now here the conditions. So if the current item, so the current data row on the loop on the column vendor. So here we have to put the name as is on Excel. So if the value for the column vendor on the current row it's not empty, so here we select is not empty, we'll fill the value on the vendor field on SAP. So for that we'll use the populate action from Y automation. And now here, so we have to indicate the element. So to indicate it, first let's over it. And now let's press Ctrl and do a left click. And so we have indicated the element, and now the text to fill in, to fill on the field. So will be the text that is on the row at the column vendor. So let's indicate that. And that's it. So let's save and let's run the flow. So just to avoid to have to close SAP, so then the flow opens and does login into the SAP system, let's disable just for now the launch SAP action. And then just before the start SAP transaction action, let's use the attach action. And with the attach mode as window title, let's select here the window title, which will be create purchase order. So this is the window title when we have SAP on the create purchase order page. So let's save. And that's it. So now we don't have to close SAP. So let's just run the flow. And here we can see that was filled the banner on the banner field. So it's working properly. It's working as expected, the flow. So here we can see that execution ended. So now we have to set up the filling of the SAP table. So fill the material, PO quantity, and net price for each row of the Excel file. So here on Power Automate Desktop, let's use again the Populate text action from UI Automation. So let's drag it after the if action. So let's indicate first the material field. So here let's click on add Y element and let's just indicate the material at the first line on the SAP table. And now let's indicate the text to fill in, so it comes on the current item, so on the row, at the column material, so the value it's on the column material. And so now let's save. And that's it for the material. So now let's add another populate text action for the PO quantity. So let's add a new Y element. Indicate PO quantity at the first line of the SAP table. And now, so the text to fill in, it's also on the current item at the column PO quantity. So I'll just copy here the column name and paste here. Let's save. And now we just need to drag another populate text field action now for the net price. So let's add a new Y element, indicate the net price, and now text to fill in again, current item, and now on the column, so the value it's at the column net price. So let's paste that inside of the quotes and let's save. So let's see how it's running our flow. So let's run it. So here we can see that the flow is filling the material, PO quantity, and net price for each row of the Excel file. However, the flow it's always writing on the first row of the SAP table, and it should instead for each row of our Excel file add a new row here on the SAP table. So we should end up here with 2 rows filled on this table. So how we can make the bot to dynamically jump to the next row on this SAP table for each row of our Excel file. So we must use dynamic selectors. So let's just take a look to the selector for the material field at the first row. So here on Power Automate Desktop, let's open the Y elements panel by clicking here. And now here we can see the Y elements that we have added. So this one, it's for the material. So let's just rename it to be more readable. So let's add here material. And now let's do a double click on the Y element so we can see the selector that is being used to target the field. And also we can edit the selector, so in our case to be dynamic and so in such a way that for each row of the Excel file we will jump to the next row on the SAP table. So here we can see the full selector that is being used to find the material field on the SAP table at the first row. So here on this list we can see here the specific ID attribute that is being used to target the field. And so here in the hand we can see these 2 numbers, a 4 and a 0. And so this is about, the 4 is a column to target, the column index, and the 0 it's the row index. So the 0 is first row, then the second row it's the index 1 and so on. And the columns follows the same logic. So This is the column number 5, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So the index is the index number 4, and this means that we find a way to increase the row index number dynamically for each row. We can always jump to the next row for each row that we have on our Excel file. And now we can do that. So first, let's create a new variable by using the set variable action, and let's use it right before the for each loop. And so let's define the variable name to SAP table row index, and the value will be initially 0. So first we will always want to target to fill the first table row. And so after doing the action, so fill the values on the SAP table at the first row initially, we want to increase the value of this variable by using the action increase. And so we'll increase the value of the variable by 1. And now let's use the value of this variable on the selector at the row index, so the row index will be incremented dynamically, and so we will always target the next row for each row of the Excel file. So how we can do that? Let's do first for the material UI element, and now let's enable the text editor, and here in the hand on the ID attribute that is about the material field on the first row of the SAP table, let's replace here the 0, which is about the row index, by calling our variable SAP table row index. And that's basically it. So now for each row of our Excel file, initially the value of this variable will be 0. So we'll target first always the first row, and then on the second row we'll target the second row on the SAP table, and so on. So let's save and do the same for the other two Y elements. So this one for the PO quantity, let's here replace the 0 by calling our variable, and the same for the Y element for the net price. And that's it. So now let's run our flow. So let's click on run. And here we can see that the flow worked as expected. So we can see one row filled on the SAP table for each row of the Excel file. So now the next step is to click here on the Save button to create a purchase order, and then close SAP. So to click on the button, we can use the click action from UI automation. So let's drag it after the for each loop. And so let's add the Y element. So let's indicate here the Save button. And now let's save. And so now if you run the flow, it should be created the purchase order in the hand. So let's run it. And here we can see that the purchase order was created successfully. So now let's run the flow from the beginning. So let's remove here the attach action and enable the launch SAP action. Also, to make our flow more robust on the Y automation activities, let's enable the simulate action property so the interaction is more robust. So let's click on save and apply this to all Y automation actions. And then in the hand, let's add the close SAP connection action. And that's it. So let's close SAP and let's run the flow. So SAP was opened And now will be done the login. Then we'll navigate to the purchase order creation page. And now the bot read the Excel file, and now it will fill the vendor, fill the material, PO quantity and net price, create the purchase order and close SAP. And it seems it worked as expected, so let's just add a delay between the click on the save button to create the purchase order and the close SAP connection. It was too fast, so let's add here just a wait. And we can add just 2 seconds, for example. And that's it for this tutorial. So if you liked it, please give a thumbs up, and also make sure you subscribe to the channel and enable notifications bell so you'll not miss any tutorial released here on the channel.